Hello, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from. Welcome to today's webinar on driving carbon neutrality with international standard. I'm Titi Susanti, Global Director for Consumer, Retail, and Food Sector at PSI. I will be your host and moderator for today's sessions. We have an exciting lineup of speakers who will share their insights and expertise on this critical topic. But before that, let's go over some housekeeping first. So all lines will be muted during the webinar, and please use the Q&A chat box to submit your questions, which we will address during the Q&A session. Or if we don't have time to answer all your questions, we will email the answers to you. The webinar will be recorded and we will share the recording and presentation materials with all the attendees after the webinar. All right, so let's take a quick look at our agenda for today's webinar. First, we will have Wan Yang speaking on the key trends on sustainability. Wan Yang is the Head of Sustainability Solutions, Asia Pacific at PSI. And the second presentation will be about the understanding of ISO 14068 and its impact on organizations by Dr. Yuan Tse Lee, Client Manager and Scheme Manager for Sustainability ASEAN at PSI. And then followed by best practice sharing by Helen To, Standardization Division, Green Innovation Department at Yamato Transport Japan, on the practice of ISO 14068 and their journey towards carbon neutrality. At the end of the presentation, we will have about 15 minutes of Q&A sessions. Before I hand over to our first speaker, some of you might not know who BSI is, so let me provide a brief introduction about BSI and how BSI is shaping a better future for the industry across the globe. As we embark on this journey, let's understand what sets BSI apart. We are not just an organization, we are a profit for purpose and royal charter organizations. What that means is that we reinvest our profit for the benefits of the society, to accelerate towards fair society and a sustainable world. In addition, BSI is also the UK national standard body and founding member of ISO. In numbers, everyone likes number. BSI has more than 120 years of history with more than 5,500 dedicated professionals across the globe. We have close to 90 offices in 31 countries. And we have been helping about 85,000 clients in 195 countries. As the UK national standard body, we develop more than 2,400 standards annually, setting global best practices for the industry to adopt. Our mission is simple yet powerful: to inspire trust, foster excellence, and ensure safety in your organizations, all while driving positive change for a better future. In sustainability world, PSI developed the first sustainability standard in 1992, which is now become Environmental Management System, or ISO 14001, after adopted by ISO organization in 1996. This standard has been implemented by hundreds of thousands of organizations globally. We also developed PAS 2060 on carbon neutrality standard, which is now become ISO 14068-1. And in addition to that, we developed dozens other standards in related to sustainability domain. And not only developing standards, BSI is also helping organizations in their sustainability journey by providing training, verification, or certifications. We have experts across the globe who can support you in GHG emissions, water and waste management, ethical supply chains, and also sustainable infrastructure. So whatever it is your sustainability journey of your organization, whether it's now start to reducing emission or managing resources or ensuring ethical practices, we are here to support you in every step of your sustainability journey. All right, so I will hand over this to Wan Yang to present on key trends on sustainability. Wan Yang, over to you.
Thank you very much, Titi. I think without further ado, I will, give my perspective on the key trends on sustainability in the year of 2024 and the years beyond. Okay, so first of all, let me give a little more information about myself. I am overseeing the sustainability business for BSI in the Asia Pacific region. Previously, 2 years ago, I joined BSI from from the United Nations Development Program. I have 25 years experience in sustainability. I think here are all the things about myself, and people tend to be proud of the past experience, so on and so forth. But I didn't put the thing which I'm most proud of, which is actually I cycle 2,000 kilometers every year. So I'm a very passionate cyclist. So I think it's also a very good green transportation. For today, I will focus on two topics. The first, of course, I will elaborate on the 10 trends I observe in 2024 and beyond. And the second part, I will, explain to you how standards and assurance may help you, why standards are important to you, because this webinar is about, international standards and carbon neutrality, right? And the first part is 10 trends to watch. Before we talk about the trends in 2024, I think it's important for us to look back at 2023. So what happened in 2023? Anyone knows about the stripes on my left hand? It's called Ed Hawkins warming stripes, right? So the climate stripes were created by a professor called Ed Hawkins at the University of Reading in 2018. So the stripes show clearly how global average temperatures have risen over nearly 2 centuries. So each stripe represents the average temperature for a single year. Shades of blue indicate cooler than average years, while red shows years that were hotter than average. Guess what the color of 2023? It's just one more dark red. On my right hand, you see right above is the wildfire in California, and bottom right is the flood in Beijing in 2023. So there was, I forgot to tell you that I'm based in Beijing. So there was a very serious flood last year, and hundreds of people lost their lives and thousands lost their homes. So it's very obvious that, this can tell us that the climate is changing. The climate change is real, okay? So the past year of 2023 is by far the hottest year in human history. It's not an estimation. It's not our imagination. Instead, it's supported by meteorological evidences. World Meteorological Organization, WMO, confirms that the annual average global temperature was 1.45 Celsius degree above pre-industrial levels in 2023. Do you remember what is the threshold set by the Paris Agreement? It is 1.5 Celsius degree, right, for human society. So we have already been above 1.45 Celsius degree. So we are very close to that threshold. Okay. So what does it mean? What does it mean? I think number one, as I said, climate change is real. I even heard 2023 is the warmest in the past 125,000 years. Number two, will 2024 be even warmer than 2023? There is a high possibility 2024 will continue to break the record, right? And number three, it makes a lot of sense for us to talk about sustainability and near zero carbon neutrality at this point of time and take climate actions right now, immediately. Okay. So trend number one. I think energy transition is speeding up, right? So in every country across the world, in Europe, in China, in Asia Pacific, in ASEAN countries, everyone is talking about energy transition. So last year, November and December, the COP28, UN's climate conference, all the countries at Dubai of UAE, they reached a consensus. What consensus did they reach? So the consensus is transition away from fossil fuel. So the specific target is triple renewables and double energy efficiency by 2030. So that's trend number one. Okay. Trend number two. So a pressing regulatory environment. Here I list some examples of EU policies, regulations, directives, laws, so on and so forth, right? So why we should care about EU's regulations and policies? Because EU is more advanced, probably the most advanced, market or region in the world in terms of climate, right? So they developed a lot of progressive laws, regulations, policies for climate, for carbon reduction and management. So I think we need to observe, that's the trend. And also, on the other hand, other countries, I think they will follow. For example, back in 2005, EU became the first region in the world to establish EU ETS, carbon trading exchange, right, in the world. And after maybe 15 years or even 15 years or 60 years, other parts of the world just follow the suit. I know in ASEAN, many countries are setting up their own carbon exchange market, right? So the other thing is, in ASEAN countries, a lot of our businesses are exporting products to EU, to Europe. So we need to, as business leaders, we need to pay attention to the new climate laws and regulations, rules in the market we are going to do business with, right? So that's another important reason we should care about EU's regulations and policies. And trend number three, carbon neutrality has been redefined. I think the next speaker will give more details about the new standard. It's called 14068, part 1. It was published November the 30th, the first day of COP28 last year. It was actually, previously we had a standard called PAS 2060 It was created 2009, and upgraded and updated in 2014. At that time, PAS 2060 was the first only carbon neutrality international standard. So from November of last year, we had the ISO standard. It's called 14068. So the background of 14068 is there is a lot of questioning about, for example, carbon neutrality, because the extreme case is some claimants, they did not do a lot of carbon reduction. They just buy some poor quality carbon credits, and then they claim they become carbon neutral. That's not correct. There are a lot of criticism and questioning from the public, from NGO, about this kind of carbon neutrality. So there needs to be a higher standard for carbon neutrality. That's the background of the release of 14068. Okay. And trend number 4, disruptive voluntary carbon market. If you are tracking the voluntary carbon market, you will probably last week you read the news that there is a new mechanism, international mechanism called ICVCM, International Council for Integrity Council for Voluntary Carbon Market. So now this new mechanism basically to make sure the carbon credits are developed with a higher standard. The credits is of higher quality, right? So now ICVCM has covered more than 98% of the whole carbon credits in the market. So it has become a very important international mechanism to ensure the integrity and quality of carbon credits. So right now, there are many carbon offsetting programs in the world. So in order to respond to international questioning about the quality and the quality of carbon credits, so a lot of new efforts have been taken. And trend number 5, there is a viable markets for product carbon footprint, right? So you see, the picture is the iWatch of Apple. So last September, the new watch of Apple's new watch, were released, and with a label called Carbon Neutral Watch, iWatch, right? So nowadays, more and more products have been labeled as carbon neutral, and we will see more in future. And in terms of ESG, now, previously we have quite a few standards for disclosure, for assurance, for rating, so on and so forth. But for disclosure, nowadays, a lot of standards have been merged and integrated to 3 mainstream standards. The first one is GRI. Probably many of you are familiar with GRI standards. Nowadays are used by 78% of big companies in the world. And it's very comprehensive and mature, has been implemented by many business for many years. And also last year, ESRS, it's a European standard for reporting. So it's a mandatory requirement. It is a double materiality, and estimated to cover more than 50,000 businesses by 2028. And the third mainstream standard is called ISSB. Okay, so I don't want to spend much time explaining the details of all those standards. So the message is that standards of ESG disclosure have been integrated and merged, and there are 3 mainstream reporting standards in the world right now for ESG. Social and governance are getting traction, right? So human rights, and also still, in EU, EU DDD, Due Diligence Directive, has been passed in April, So it put a lot of emphasis on the supply chain and also the human rights and work safety, for example, of the supply chain. So right now, social and governance are also getting a lot of attention. Supply chain management, right? Needless to say, especially it's relevant to this part of the world, Asia Pacific and ASEAN. A lot of our businesses are suppliers of multinational companies. It's important because top companies, they set, for example, climate targets. They will absolutely cascade those targets to their suppliers, right? And trend number 9, carbon tariff. The first carbon tax is called CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, right? It was, I think, the transitional period of time started October the 1st of 2023. And the initial coverage, including 6 sectors, including cement, electricity, aluminum, iron, steel, fertilizer, and hydrogen, right? So still, I don't want to spend much time on the details, but let you know that the carbon tariff is coming, meaning that if the business in this part, for example, in ASEAN, if we don't reduce carbon, we will probably lose our business. It will be difficult for us to enter into more advanced market like EU, or we will have a higher cost, right? And trend number 10 is nature-based solutions of biodiversity. Okay, TNFD, some of you might be familiar with TCFD. TNFD is the commensurate of TCFD, Task Force Nature-Related Financial Disclosure. 46% of top global 250 companies reported on nature and biodiversity in 2022. I think in 2024, I think at least more than half, 50% of top companies will report on nature. Okay. And EUDR, right? EU regulation on deforestation-free products, okay, was passed in June of 2023. And mandatory enforcement will start from December 30th of this year. Okay, so part number 2, I will very quickly to give you some ideas about why standards are important, how standards and assurance may help you. So you will see that in order for our society to achieve net zero, so the main sectors, including the power sector, industries, construction, transportation, needs to work very hard to reduce and manage their carbon emission, right? So, but you see in the bottom, the green, level, the bottom level are the I call multipliers or accelerator, which can help the main sectors to achieve their net zero target. For example, like carbon finance, right? Carbon finance, they have a huge influence on the businesses. They're on the upper stream. If they say that if you want to get money from us, from the bank, you need to reduce emission. You need to set carbon target, for example. So the businesses which want investment or money, loans, they need to listen, right? And standard and certification is also one of the multipliers, right? I will let you know that, for example, like the assurance, like the labeling, which could boost the business boost your business and also can build trust. So why we should care about standard and certification? I think there are multiple reasons. I summarized them to 6 reasons. First of all, standards. What are standards? Standards are the summary of best practices. So if you follow standards, it will help you to improve your management and build trust, right? So if you have been certified, assured against a certain standard, so people will immediately understand that your quality has reached a certain level, right? So it will help you to build trust. In our community, in the standard and certification community, we have a saying that there are two international languages. One is English, right? Everyone needs to, English is the international language. The other international language is standard. You don't have to, explain more. If you have the certificate against certain standards, the certificates will speak itself, right? And need for compliance, needless to say, buyer's requirement, investors' demand, and market access. The CBAM is a perfect example, of market access. So some markets set the bar of sustainability for imported products. Okay. And here I mapped some standards, for your journey towards net zero. So the first step a business, an entity needs to take is to measure, right? Measure your greenhouse gas emission. So the standard you can use, for example, like ISO 14064, ISO 14067. And the next step you want to do is to, reduce and manage your emission, right? So you have quite a few standards to support you effectively reduce your emission, manage your emission. And third step, no matter how hard you try, you still have some, residual emissions. So you need to offset, right? There are also certain standards supporting you to offset. And last, you can declare. You can declare you have achieved 14,068. Okay. And I also mapped some standards which can support you to improve your ESG performance. Okay, so for ESG, we have environmental. Under environmental, we have quite a few standards. We also have governance. We also have S. Under each, aspect, there are multiple standards which can help you through the journey of improving your ESG performance. Okay, that's it. I think that's all for my presentation. The last word I want to share with you is, sustainability is about future, right? So the best way to predict future is for us to work together to create the future. Thank you very much. I think I'm handed over to the next speaker, Yuanzhe, over to you.
Thank you, Wang Yang. Okay. So before it starts, I just have a short introduction of myself. So I'm a doctor in the material science. And before that, I also do some safety and health environment related study for my master. So now I am the ISO 14064 lead verifier, as well as the PAS 2060, which is the old version of the ISO 14068. Okay, so later I will explain this a little bit. It's also a lead verifier. So now, because of my working experience in semiconductor for more than 6 years, so I'm now still also an NEA accredited complex sector expert for Sector 3 regarding for semiconductor. And also I participate in some of the GHG carbon reduction projects as the lead validator. And if you have interest in some of my publication recently regarding for some carbon neutral and management, you also can take a look from maybe some Google Scholar as well. Yeah, it's some interest sharing. So today's agenda is going to talk about the ISO 14068 in a bit details because it's just new standard release in the last November, end of November. And I also can share something regarding for where we are in Singapore, as well as some GG represents for how to reach a carbon neutral and net zero. And then follow will be some impact on organization. Okay. So for the ISO 14068 is a bit different than ISO 14064. So it's a more detail regarding for how to reach a carbon neutral. So the first draft will is begin in 2023, the January. Then you can see from the timeline. So in the August, so they will be already submitted for the approval by FDIS. And then in the November is released and published. So now it goes to 2024. So some of you may have heard about that. But before it's going into the ISO 14068-1, so previously it's earned on by BSI. So it's a BSI standard for public access. So it's a PAS 2060. So it's already drafted in 2014. So what is the standard for carbon neutral? So you can see from the bottom right. So starting from the carbon footprint is still the same practice that we have for currently, right? We do some carbon verification, GG verification using ISO standard like ISO 14064 or 067. It's either a product-based or organization-based. Then will be the carbon credit. So means they will use some carbon credit to offset the emission other than the threshold or the line. Then we'll have the net zero of the carbon neutral. So this is also in accordance with the carbon neutrality management plan. Okay, so I think now you are also scratching your head, right? So far there are many standards for ISO 14K. So regarding either carbon neutral, carbon management, GHG inventory, so on and so forth. So what is the relationship in between different, for example, standards among that? So starting from the left will be ISO 14064, I mark as yellow. So the dash one is regarding for the inventory and report. So it's what we commonly do in our yearly practice. So after a whole year of running, right, we will submit our GHG inventory report. Then in the bottom is ISO 14062. So that one is for your GHG program, which is going to see or do some decarbonization to minimize the emission from your company-wise. So it's either a boundary from organizational or it's from the process. Okay, then the green one is ISO 14067. So that one is more focusing on the product. So for that case, we'll do more is focusing on the carbon footprint study. So it's a life cycle like assessment study report. So we may understand for some of the products, how the generation of the whole greenhouse gas, the inventory would be. And combined with the ISO 14064-1 and ISO 14067, it will be your company GHG statement. Okay, so it really depends on what is your product and what is the scope of your company. You can decide what is your GHG statement. So here I give you an example. For example, like semiconductor, we have Apple. Apple is a design company in the upstream. And for example, like TSMC is the midstream as the manufacturer. So for the Apple-wise, they will normally do is ISO 14067 is to have a lifespan analysis for the carbon footprint. But for the manufacturing like TSMC from Taiwan, they will normally do is ISO 14064 is regarding for the manufacturing process and the greenhouse gas they are using. So once you have this GHG statement, you need to use some carbon credit to do some offsetting or to have some carbon neutral report and claim. So this is the logic in between the GHG statement and carbon credits. And then ISO 14068-1 come in is to declare what is the carbon neutral report and claim should include and should be considered. But from right side, we see there are also some third-party verifier want to participate in this whole process. So means like there are many other non-ISO GHG programs, which will be additional to the ISO 14060 series as well. So comparing with the ISO 14068, the standard framework with the previous we know is the ISO 14064 or 67, you can see the clause 9, 10, 11 are the new things that we can make it a circle for each reporting period. Okay, so still goes to clause 6, 7, 8 is still doing some quantification work of the GHG inventory and also to take the consideration of any gas removals. That is what we're currently doing. Then 9 is starting doing some formulation, implementation, the response to carbon neutral management plan is what is talking regarding for the SBTI. Is either short-term or long-term target we need to reach to have the minimization or decarbonization. And then coming into the 10 will be some real reduction and real increase or decrease, right? And technical improvement to enhance the greenhouse carbon reduction. So this will be the next step for us. So I can see some of the companies already implemented this kind of practice in there. For example, like semiconductor, they do install some local scrubber in the end of the use or end of the product. So that one will also reduce the emission from the site to the environment as well. And then 11 will be offset the carbon footprint. So I know some of you may heard about one word is ETS, right? Emission Trading System. So far there are 4 very big ETS system along the world. So Singapore is one of them. So if you have any interest, you also can take a look from there. And then after you finish all these steps, you will come to your reporting and approval for your claims. So this is a whole circle for each reporting period. Okay, next one. So I make it clear. So from step 1 to step 6. So step 1 still starting from emission source identification, as mentioned by Wang Yang as well. Then define the scope of the problem, either scope 1, 2, or 3, and then calculate the GHG emission. So it's very familiar, right? So it's now what we are doing these days. Then after we're doing the verification of the emission report by the third party, for example, our BSI can do this for you to issue your verification reports. Then we'll be doing some next step of the disclosure and also doing some saving or decarbonization. So this is a 6-step approach. So far, we're also trying to have some training arrangement for ISO 14068 by organization as well. So internally, internal BSI, we already have some internal training. And also externally, we are now also designing the external training programs regarding for climate change management, one net zero. So it will be a detail and we will try to include some practical examples in this training. So if you have interest, you will find it available in the public shortly. So this, I think, just shared by Wang Yang, we quickly go through is regarding for 1.5 degrees C enriched net zero. So actually, some of you may misunderstand the net zero and carbon neutral, because just now we mentioned, right, the ISO 14068 is carbon neutral, it's not net zero. But net zero, actually, we still have a standard called ISO IWA 42. It's not in the slides. But if you have interest, you also can take a look from there. But net zero is definitely have a higher requirement from technological and also for the company-wise to have its own decarbonization program. So for the local development is what you're interested in. So in Singapore, in 2020, right, we already declare and set some clear emission reduction target. So the net zero could be reached in 2050, and the cap emission is in 2030. So these are the two, cutoff dates or cutoff time period that we can do. And also we already issue the carbon tax already for 3 of the industry. And in this year, right, the carbon tax already goes up to 25 Sing dollar. So it's already a huge impact for some of these companies within the list. So here it gives you an overall mapping for the carbon tax and also the key consideration. So the IMF already provides some reference for the carbon tax is by 2030, you will reach the Sing dollar 107. So it's quite high. So where are we now? So in the circle, rectangular one, right? So in 2024 is already 25, but previous year is still $5. It's already 5 times. And by the end of 2030, the price will goes up to 50 to 80. So it's a huge compact. So China is also going to implement such practice soon, but I think the price will not be as high as Singapore as well. Okay, but EU, you can see it's already around like, I think it's 4th or 5th time of Singapore already. Yeah, okay, next one. So Singapore standard and also the ISO standard also got a bit different. So here, just for your information, for your interest, right? Singapore is actually more based on Singapore priorities, but for ISO, it's based on the participating members. And for ISO, it just provides a framework, but for the Singapore standard, it's more prescriptive and to standardize the different industrial practice. So means like Singapore, you can see is more specific according to the Singapore situation. But ISO is based on the whole like framework and also have less prescriptive for the technical method as well. So the Carbon Pricing Act, as I mentioned, right, so far we set a threshold, it's not we, like it's the NEA set a threshold is 2,000 and 25,000 tons per year. So within the range of the 2,000, you just need to, do your own maintain or to have your own tracking and reporting. But in between the 2,000 and 25K, per ton per year, you need to submit a report to NEA. Then if it's above 25K, you need to provide not only the reports, you also need to be a monitoring plan and even pay the carbon tax to the government. And just as I mentioned, right, the price now is going up to 95 Sing dollar. So it's a huge impact for different industry. Okay, so if you have interest, you also can take a look from the NEA. They also got some media or news to share about how this, the carbon tax is going on and what is included in the gas monitoring. Yeah, next one. So compare with the Singapore standard and ISO, so you can see there are different concerns. The reason why I can just have a fun sharing about that, because for Singapore, they only focus on the scope 1. But it doesn't mean like for Singapore, they don't pay attention to your scope 2 or scope 3. So scope 2, if you check your electricity bill, there is already a statement about how much money goes into the payment or goes to the carbon tax of the electricity. So only regarding for the scope 1, for these 6 gases, like PFC and HFC during the IPPU and fuel combustion, will be the high concern from the NEA. Okay, but from ISO, it is just a framework to let every companies to have their own reporting, measurement, so on and so forth, right? For all these included in their scope. But here I want to mention another thing is regarding for scope 3, right? Because I know some of the company in Singapore is more like a wholesale company, so it's buy and sell. So it's no direct, or indirect using our consumption. But some of the company, during the time we're doing the verification, they are very ambitious. Means right, they want to include upstream and downstream. So it's definitely no right or wrong, because according to the Appendix 4, right, it could be some of the responsibility you can take. But still, I suggest from the very beginning, you can have, or you can start from the baseline scenario first to be more accurate within your boundary and then doing the extent. So here is just I mentioned, right? So for now, we only see that Singapore is charging the carbon tax into 3 sectors, the petroleum and natural gas, which we short for oil and gas, right? Second one is complex sector 2 is the chemical and chemical engineering industry. The number 3 is the semiconductor. Okay, so this actually, if we see the increase like suddenly from 5 Sing dollar to 25 Sing dollar, you will pay from means maybe 1,000 to million. So this is really happens now during the time we're doing the verification. So this actually becomes a challenge for the Singapore manufacturing sector. Here's another fun fact, right? Before and after the COVID. So before COVID, the 3% of overall companies in Singapore is the big companies, means like 97 are SMEs. But after the COVID, only 1% is still remain as big company. Other one, they either change or they either move or even they, reallocate. So these are the current like 3 risks for this manufacturer facing. And also for some operational uniqueness, this one is also they need to consider. So it means they may face some technological constraints as well. And also for the cost transfer, there will be some money, or it's not a little, right, goes to the carbon tax. So this one will also increase the risk of the company running. So here is a very interesting triangle I always want to share with you. So these are the different stakeholders among this MRV for not only like carbon neutral, but also for carbon verification process. So NEA and the taxable facilities, they don't direct contact. So they ask us to be the third party to do the verification for them. And we will keep this communication among them as well. So means once we got any like new standard or sharing, we also can discuss with the NEA, but still we will be the, is the communication bridge in between NEA and taxable facility as well. Yeah, so these are the very funny fact that we have in Singapore. So still going back to the carbon neutral, so everything will be the same as the monitoring plan that we have to identify the emission source, then goes to the different stream. So source and stream, the difference is the source may be the same gas, but stream maybe goes into different process. So these are kind of difference in between the emission source and emission stream. And then we'll go to the method to use. Because for now, some company are using, for example, tier 2 or tier 1 or tier 2A to B to C. So these are the different standards that we need to unify or we need to let the industry to decide. So this we still will borrow the industrial norms to decide which is the correct way they can do that. And after that, we identify the GG to be reported and generate the whole report according to the monitoring plan. So towards carbon neutral, right, as I mentioned, first thing we need to enhance the contribution for the reduction. So it's kind of decarbonization we can do from like mass solution, like fleet solution, as well as aircraft or mining solution is the traditional industry. And also from the new industry, for example, like advanced manufacturing, we have some renewable energy can be used, like wind energy, like solar panel, right? So these are the minimize CO2 emission strategy as well. So it really depends on what your company scope and what is your running process of your companies. We can choose to decide to contribute towards the carbon neutral. Okay, so it's more like the PDCA circle that we have for other ISO. I think for the carbon neutral, it's still the management level like the PDCA. So it really depends on what is the real situation, and you need to involve more talents in engineering, in management as well, to decide the short-term and long-term target. So documentation-wise, we just starting from establish the process, as I mentioned, right, 6-step approach, then establish the documentation process, and then doing the sustainability document information or exposure to the public as well. So here just we go through regarding for some subject and boundary selection. So this one is really depends on you want to do it as organization wise or like doing product wise. So it's either using ISO 14064 or 67. And also select these subjects also depends on the board understanding from organization complete carbon footprint to ensure that the carbon footprint of selected subject can be demonstrated in the context. So don't be so ambitious. Just do what you can do and make the assurance at a higher level is the first priority. Okay, so this is just as I mentioned, right? So regarding for carbon neutral, and I think it's not only regarding for company-wise, right? It's already a global and national climate policy. But from organization-wise, right, it also depends on competency for your action. Because for some company, they definitely need to invest a lot of money into this carbon project. But what is the first priority? What is the real situation can reflect on your report? And what is the long-term decision for that? You still need to adapt from the change according to a science information as well. Okay, I think that's all for my sharing. Thank you.
So good morning and also good afternoon to everyone. I'm Helen from Yamato Transport. I'm the Assistant Manager of the Standardization Division of Green Innovation Department. My company, Yamato Transport, is a logistic company providing parcel delivery services in Japan. So today, the topics that I would like to share is about the recent action that our company has taken to tackle with the climate change. And we made a carbon neutrality claim in accordance with the ISO 14060 for our delivery services. So thank you for this slide. I would like to have a brief introduction of our company. Regarding the parcel delivery services, our company has the #1 market share in Japan for around 47%, which the annual number of the parcel that we are delivering is around 2.27 millions. So our management philosophy is to contribute to the creation of prosperous society. And our parcel delivery services assist to take a role as an essential services to support the whole society in Japan as an infrastructure. So next page, please. Yes, so I would like to have introduction of the background on why Yamato Transport chose to have the carbon neutrality claim in this moment. So objectively, you can see that on the left-hand side, the transport sector is actually responsible for nearly 1/4 of all the greenhouse gas emission. So this is said to be one of the greatest share of all emission sources. Meanwhile, when you're looking about the graph on the right-hand side, you can see that under the ongoing expansion of the related market, such as the EC market, the number of the parcel delivered in Japan is projected to be double, actually, in 2050 compared to 2020. So you can see that the environmental landscape actually changed very rapidly, and you can based on the data, you can see that actually there is more focus is put on the transport sector. And talking about the country, Japan has also announced the target of the net zero GHG emission by 2050, and as a middle point in 2030. Japan put a target of 46% reduction from the 2013 level. So as one of the top player in Japan, also with our ability, we decided to devote more to take our action for the carbon neutrality at this moment. Next page, please. Thank you. Our company, Yamato Transport, the logistic company, actually we could adjust the climate change to a very large extent because of two of the reasons. Firstly, our emission raised in the life cycle actually covered both in-house and also outsourcing. And secondly, you can see that on the right-hand side, the top graph, the chart there, is that we use diverse mode of the transportation, including not just the road transportation, but also part of the air, sea, and also rail also. So we understand the impact, you can see that both positive and also negative of the carbon footprint of our deliveries. And that's why we are committed to take the responsibility for the environmental impact of our parcel delivered in Japan. Next, please. And this is for your reference that here is the detail of the life cycle carbon footprint of our delivered services. Very simple, you can see that you can see the emission at each stage of our parcel delivered services, and the pickup, the long haul transportation, and also the final delivery has the largest portion. Next, please. So that's all for the background. And one more point that I would like to add on is that not just talking about along with the responsibility, as we are a company, so our decision is for the carbon neutrality is also driven by the voice of our customer. You can see that we have surveyed for our customers, and all of the segment reflects their priority on choosing a climate responsible service in the future. This means that we need to build a business that is future facing. And also when you're thinking, when you take a look from the aspect of our customer, for example, for the individuals, just like everyone is here, we have limited way to contribute for climate change. Yes, but we can choose and also contribute by our consumption. So customer now could join to contribute to tackle with the climate change by using our delivery services in Japan, because we have achieved the carbon neutrality, and we also declared to commit to maintain it in the future. Next, please. So starting on this line, I would like to introduce how we achieve our carbon neutrality and how we will maintain it in the future. So yes, just like the two speakers have introduced to you that we have the net zero growth in 2050, not just for Japan and our company, but as a global aim. So to contribute to the global net zero, it is important to demonstrate the carbon neutrality of our delivery services based on a very clear standards. So why ISO standards is needed is because the ISO actually allows all of the stakeholders to communicate in the same language, so that not just we are the service provider, but for our clients, for the society, and also for the customer, all of us can communicate and to have the same transparency based on this ISO. And yes, because achievement to the net zero definitely require the involvement of our stakeholders. So the verification by BSI actually supports us to communicate with our customer with transparency, so that it also enhances the credibility of our carbon neutrality claim. So back to the detail of our carbon neutrality claim. So to achieve the carbon neutrality of our delivery services, first of all, we put our priority on the GHG reduction inside our value chain. So besides, we also have the financial contribute to the climate change mitigation beyond our value chain, which is the carbon credit, and compensated the unabated emission raised from our activity. So with the verification in accordance with the ISO 14068, we are now able to provide our delivery services as a climate responsible services. Next, please. And yes, in line with the ISO, we put our target in terms of emission intensity, which means per parcel, as the curve you can see colored in red color. We also set our pathway and also management plan based on how to enhance our reduction activity to improve our company impact to the climate change in the long term. So you can see that we also have this pathway included in our report posted in our website, so that we are now able to provide a very visible story on our climate action. So with also together with a commitment to maintain the carbon neutrality of our delivery services starting from last year, 2022 to 2050. And at this moment, we have already achieved it in 2022, and also we will evaluate and also revise our plan year by year for better performance under the year ISO certification audit. Next, please. So how to reduce our GHG emission is that actually we have consolidated GHG reduction strategies. We launched it since 2021 under the commitment from our top management. And the implementation of the emission reduction has been run for years. So the detail will be on the next slide. Yes, thank you. So the main action that we have taken for our reduction is that, first of all, EVs, the electric vehicles for our delivery vehicles. And second, the power that we are using is we try to convert it to the PVs, such as the solar panels, and also together with the usage of the renewable energies. And also, we do not just provide the ambient delivery services, we also have the cold, chilled, and also frozen partial delivery services. So we also put an effort on the reduction of the usage of dry ice. So as a total, we invest more than $2.5 billion for GHG reduction implementation at this moment. Next, please. So under this kind of reduction action, the result is that compared to the base year of the financial year 2021, we achieved a reduction of 6% per parcel for our delivery services last year. So this percentage actually exceeded the annual percentage for the transport sector suggested in some of the global organizations, such as the IEA, the International Energy Agency. And you can see that our long-term target is pushed on the 2050, and only emission remained after trying all of the technically and also economically feasible GHG reduction. So the emission left we will counterbalance by the removals inside and also outside our value chain. So at this moment, the last year, 2022, it is our first reporting period, and we will continue to enhance our reduction and also with removal activity. You can see that we are trying to giving a drop in the curve so that to maintain the carbon neutrality of our delivery services. Next, please. Yes, because this is the first year of our carbon neutrality claim, so it is almost impossible for us to cut off all of our emission in a very short time period. So we have also using the carbon credit to counterbalance the emission that we have released to the atmosphere last year. So all of the carbon credit are verified contribution, and the total amount is 2.5 million tons CO2, and this also contribute to the provision of the electricity for 2 million households. Next, please. And yes, this is my last slide that I would like to share, is that we are not just only focusing on adopting the reduction technology, but we also started taking some of the innovation and also development of the technology towards our GHG emission reduction. And what we are doing is that we cooperate with Honda to develop the swap battery for delivery vehicles, the EVs also. And this innovation is also actually approved as a project by our government. It is approved by the Ministry of the Economy and Trade and also Industry. It's called METI, and it is a project of the Green Innovation Fund. So yes, to conclude is that we have our, yes, thank you. We conclude is that we have our carbon neutrality claim, and we also had our reduction for our first year, but still there are many steps, so that this is just the start of our journey, and we would like to continue to maintain our claim in accordance with the ISO in order to provide a kind of climate responsible services to our customer and also to our society. So thank you for your listening, and I would like to pass the next session to TT. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Helen, and thank you to all of our speakers. We are now come to the Q&A session. We have actually also some questions come in during the registration. So we will answer that questions first. So the first question was asking about the relationship between ISO 14040, 4467, which is about life cycle assessment and product carbon neutrality, and ISO 14068. So how to realistically demonstrate this carbon neutrality product using LCA study in reference to this ISO standards.
Thank you. Probably I can take this question, Titi.
Yes.
So first of all, I think it will take probably, there are a lot of technical details for us to discuss this question. So I will just be very brief. So ISO 14068 usually works with other standards. 68 doesn't work alone, just by itself. So it works with, for example, ISO 14064 Part 1, and as this question indicated, also with 14067, 14040, and 44. So yeah, so 14068 works together with other, standard. Just put it more simply, usually for the product level carbon neutrality, first of all, you need to use the standards to calculate the carbon footprint of this specific product, right? Using life cycle assessment. And then the 68 is basically a guidance for you, for example, you need to have a carbon management plan. You need to have a pathway. You also need to, the 68 also set requirements for the carbon offset, right? So with 14068, then to help you, to guide you to achieve carbon neutrality. But the fundamental, the first step is to use a 607 and life cycle assessment to calculate the carbon footprint of this specific product. I think if you, I think we could discuss this in more details offline. There will be a lot of technical details, for us to discuss if you are interested.
Okay. Thank you, Won Young. We will reach out to the person who sent these questions by email after this webinar. And the second question is about, after the company get this, for example, carbon certification or ISO 14064 verification, how they go about on the to the carbon credit trading after that. Maybe you want to answer this question?
Yeah. Actually, this question is the most common question that I receive during the discussion with all the Singapore, like the talent in finance as well as some investment firm, right? So regarding for carbon credit, for Singapore government-wise, is actually they try to align this with the same idea as the carbon tax. For example, like the steel industry I mentioned, right? So the carbon tax is actually you buy from the government. The 25 Sing dollar per ton is also the carbon credit you can get from the government. Okay, so for some of the company, they are trying to use some emission trading. For example, I buy from the 4 big trading system in US, in Singapore, in the EU. But from Singapore wise, right, they only accept like 5% of the overall of your emission to be offset using that way. So it means you can buy this 5% from this trading system. But other than that, it's not take into the consideration for the offset practice you're using all source one. So I think Singapore is trying to align and trying to not mess up all these different ideas on the concept. But from other like government or like industry, for example, like Taiwan is a very funny situation, right? For example, like advanced manufacturing, like semiconductor, they already use this method to do some carbon trading to offset their emission. But then their government want to charge another round of the carbon tax. So it's a burden, it's a pressure that they have on the industry. So for this one, they definitely got some disagreement for that. So it really depends on how government is leading or control this policy, or like the announcement of any regulation or act can push the things to move forward.
Okay, thank you. So there's one more questions. Oh, sorry, 2 more questions on the from the registration. We also have a question about CBAM. So does CBAM compliance require ISO 14064 and ISO 14067?
Yes and no. So CBAM actually, I think I give the answer in the Q&A box. So I think someone asked this question already. So CBAM is a twin of EU ETS. So the purpose of CBAM is to avoid carbon leakage, right? To level the playing field. So it takes the methodology of EU ETS. So right now in the transitional period of time, last August, EU, they published a implementation regulation. One of the annexes is about the methodology. So if you want to know the details, you can have a study of that annex. So it has a lot of details on that. But the methodology of CBAM borrows a lot from EU ETS, right? But some of the logic, some of the methodology overlaps with 14,000 ISO 14,064 part 1. There is a lot of misunderstanding about CBAM and ISO 14067. They are not the same. They are not the same. It's not product carbon footprint. Okay, so it's not 14,067. So yeah, so if you want to know more about the CBAM methodology, you probably go to EU's website. You will see the methodology has a lot of overlaps with the EU ETS calculation methodology.
Thank you, Wan Young. And then this is the last questions we received from the registration. This is to Helen, to Yamato. We understand that in logistic companies, you handle like millions of parcels daily with the size of Yamato. and how difficult it is to calculate, all this carbon emission for each of the parcels with different method, because yeah, so I understand in the logistic companies, they have a different method of also delivery. There's by air, by sea, and also maybe the road. So maybe you can explain a little bit more on that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Titi, and also thank you for the question also. And for how to calculate our GHG emission of our parcel delivery services, because we set it is as a product and also service level. So we calculate actually based on the ISO related to it. I think it's 10467 is for the level. So we use it for calculating the emission or waste by delivering our parcel. So no matter how large or how small it is, the weight of it, all of the data is included in our system. So we just need to use the data and also follow the rules included in the ISO to calculate the emission of our parcel delivery services, just like other portals. So yes, maybe you can, the people giving the question, maybe you can refer to our carbon neutrality report that we have already posted on our website. We have a more clear breakdown regarding each emission of our life cycle and all of each stage. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Helen. We actually have a lot of questions in Q&A box, but thanks to all the speakers, most of them already answered, and we have 2 more questions here left in the Q&A. I think we only have about 5 more minutes in our Q&A session. So there's a question, maybe this is a quick question to Dr. Lee about the amendment of ISO 14001, which it might be that the energy management will be also included in the new version. Have you heard anything about this new amendment at all?
So for this one, actually, I can see some of the trend, right, to include ISO 14064, the elements in the ISO 14K, means like ISO 14001 audit. So this one is the trend that I have. But for the ISO, like energy related, right, so normally we'll go to ISO 50K. But 50K is really depends on the size and the energy consumption. So for these SMEs, right, so for some of the consideration of the ISO, of 14001, we're still looking back to the, for example, the energy wise. But for the big company that already have the, for example, the regulatory like ISO 50K, they won't do it, I mean, or merge it together into the 14001. So this is the sharing.
Thank you. And there's also, I think you're about to answer this last questions, which maybe you can answer it live.
Okay, so regarding for the leading countries, right, still I think like most of the EU countries are leading this, because I see some of the manufacturing is already passed to the ASEAN or like developing countries. But regarding for the Singapore, I think is leading the trend or leading development in the ASEAN. So means like not only the regulation or the act, right, is also another practice they are enhancing. Because you can see after COVID, so many like advanced manufacturing fab or like the EV cars, right, already popped in Singapore. And so more and more regulation related to different industry has been developing in these days. So I can see because even for Taiwan, right, they are leading this carbon neutral or leading this verification for the development of this carbon related the regulation or whatever, but still they are the followers for Singapore. Because Singapore, I think, is a small country, it's an island country with limited, it's kind of like worst scenario among all these ASEAN countries, right? But I think still they are leading everything. They are enhance the practice, enhance the laws and regulations. I think it's a good, I mean, reference for most of the countries, either a big one or small one.
Right, thank you so much. Thank you for our all the speakers who answered all the questions, and also participants who sent the questions. So we'd like to thank you to all our audience for your participation and engagement. We had a lot of questions, so thank you so much. Remember, driving carbon neutrality is a collective effort, and together we can make a meaningful impact on our planet. Wishing you a wonderful day ahead, and if you have any more questions or need assistance in the future, please feel free to reach out to us. Take care and thank you. Bye-bye.